If you've ever stopped yourself from sharing your story because you were afraid of what other people might think, then this is for you. I get it. I have been there, believe me. For years, I stayed small. I stayed quiet. And not because I didn't have a story, but because I was kind of terrified of what people would think if they knew the truth. Because, come on, I had a felony. What would people think of me? What would they say if they knew that I was arrested on felony charges because I trusted the wrong person? That I let someone manipulate me and take advantage of me? Would they think I was stupid? Would they think I was dangerous? I spent so many years trying to manage people's perceptions, trying to tell just enough of my story to be interesting, but not so much that they'd see the mess underneath. Because let's be real, everyone loves a comeback story. But only after you've already made it. And for a long time, I believed that I had to fix myself before I could be worthy of being seen. Until I realized something. The people who judge you, they're not doing anything courageous with their lives. The loudest critics are usually the most insecure. Confident people don't tear others down. And most importantly, the opinion of people who don't pay your bills, not your problem. So if you've been waiting until you're ready to tell your story, if you've been trying to clean it up or make it sound better, more polished, less real, you're missing the whole point. Confidence isn't something that you wait for. It's something you build. And today I'm giving you the confidence code, the exact mindset shifts that helped me stop holding back, own my story, and turn it into my most powerful asset. By the time we're done, you'll know why confidence isn't something that you're born with, it's something you create. How to stop overthinking and start owning your story, even if you feel like a total mess. And why the fear of being judged is actually a good sign. Yes, really. This is your permission slip to take up space, to stop waiting, to stop worrying, and to finally own your damn story. So let's do this.
Turn up your frequency with Mind Love. Bite-sized brain hacks for seekers, dreamers, and doers. It's time to give your mind a little love with your host, Melissa Monti.
And let's start with the thing that's really keeping you from owning your story. It's not that you don't know what to say. It's not that your story isn't interesting enough. It's not even that you don't think it matters. It's fear. Fear of what other people will think. Fear of what they'll say behind your back. Fear of being seen. And I get it because that fear ruled my life for years. When I was arrested and charged with a felony, I had one overwhelming thought. This is it. My life is over. And not because I actually did anything wrong, although there were 1,000 things during that time. Not even because I was scared of going to jail, although I was also scared of that. And not because people would know, but more so that people would see the truth. That was my worst nightmare. Because if people knew I had been taken advantage of, if people knew that I had believed the wrong person, stayed too long, ignored too many red flags, would they think I was dumb? Would they think I deserved it? For so long, I believed that I had to keep certain parts of my story locked away. That I could only tell my story once I had completely transformed. Once I was on the other side and successful and polished and untouchable. Because let's be real, nobody wants a redemption arc when you're still in the messy middle. But here's the thing. You don't get confidence from hiding. You get confidence from ownership. You don't earn your worthiness, you decide it. You don't wait until you're fixed to tell your story. You tell it, and that's what helps you heal. And let me prove it to you. Think about the most powerful stories that you've ever heard. The ones that stopped you in your tracks. Oprah Winfrey was sexually abused as a child, became pregnant at 14, lost her baby, and went on to build an empire. Viola Davis grew up in extreme poverty, eating out of trash cans, and became one of the most celebrated actresses in the world. Brene Brown spent her entire career studying shame and vulnerability until she had a breakdown on stage that forced her to live her own work. They didn't wait until they were perfect to share their stories. They shared them because they weren't perfect, and people connected to them because of it. That's the paradox of fear. The thing you're afraid of, being judged, being rejected, is the very thing that will make people trust you. The most successful, most impactful people in the world, they aren't fearless. They just stopped letting fear be the thing that made their decisions. So if you're still afraid of what people will think, let me ask you something. Who are these people? Seriously, who exactly are you afraid of? Your high school classmates? That one ex who still watches your Instagram stories? Your coworker who once rolled her eyes when you talked about your dreams? Are these the people actually doing something courageous with their lives? Are they out there creating something? Are they taking risks? Are they showing up for themselves every single day? No? Then why the hell are you giving them power over your life? Look, if you don't tell your story, it doesn't disappear. It just controls you from the shadows. The only way out is through. And the only way through? You have to start talking. Not perfectly, not polished, not when you have 1 million followers or a 7-figure business or a TED Talk. Now, as you are. Because here's the truth. The people who will judge you aren't your people. The people who will talk shit were never going to support you anyways. And the people who need your story, they can't find you if you stay quiet. This isn't about finding confidence. It's about deciding that your mission is more important than your fear. Here's the lie we've all been sold about confidence. That it's something you either have or you don't. We're taught that some people are just naturally confident, while the rest of us are stuck with self-doubt forever. But that's not how it works. Confidence isn't something that you're born with. It's something you build. And if you're waiting to feel confident before you start sharing your story, you'll be waiting forever. Because confidence doesn't come from thinking. It comes from doing. And it actually comes from 3 kinds of doing. First, confidence comes from clarity. If you're not confident in your story, it's because you haven't fully owned it yet. I want you to think about the areas of your life where you feel really solid. Why do you feel that way? It's probably because you've done the work to understand and refine it. You have to do the work beneath it. Now, the second kind of doing is that confidence comes from repetition. Most people aren't confident telling their story because they've never practiced it out loud. You have to talk about your story, write about it, process it. The more you say it, the more natural it becomes. And the third type of doing is ownership. Confidence comes from ownership. The people who seem the most confident aren't necessarily the smartest or the most talented or the most worthy. They just stopped asking for permission to take up space. They decided their story mattered, so people started listening. You build confidence through action. You don't wait until you feel confident to start showing up. You start showing up, and that's what makes you feel confident. Here's the thing about me. For some reason, I don't really get nervous the way most people do. I've always had this thing where I say things for the shock factor. I don't overthink it. I don't rehearse it in my head for hours. It just comes out. The first time I ever told someone I had a felony, it wasn't some big emotional moment. It wasn't on a stage or in a heart-to-heart with a friend. It was in a party atmosphere, probably over multiple lines of blow. And I said it in the most casual, offhand way, like, yeah, I got a felony. Wild, right? And here's what I realized in that moment. People take things as you give them. If you say something like it's normal, they'll take it as normal. If you say something with confidence, they'll see it as confidence. But if you say something like it's shameful or like it's something to be embarrassed about, they'll feel that too. And here's the bigger truth. If you haven't processed your story and found meaning, people will find it for you. So you have to do it first. Own it, or they will define it for you. When I finally told my felony story in a real way, in a way that had depth, in a way that actually meant something to me, people responded completely differently. Instead of judgment, I got messages from people who finally felt seen. I got messages from women who had been manipulated and taken advantage of, but were too ashamed to admit it. I got messages from people who had made mistakes that followed them for years and thought they'd never be able to move forward. I got messages from people who were terrified of sharing their story, but suddenly felt brave enough to try. And that's when I realized confidence isn't about how people respond to you. Confidence is about deciding that you're no longer willing to stay small. I built confidence by owning my story before anyone else could define it for me. And the more I shared my story, the more powerful I became. Because every time you tell your story, you take back a little more control. You take control from the shame. You take control from the fear. You take control from the version of you that still believes they have to hide. So if you're waiting for confidence before you take action, that's not how it works. Confidence comes from clarity. Confidence comes from repetition. Confidence comes from ownership. And you don't need anyone's permission to start. I want to give you a little insight into the truth about what people think. Because let's be real. You already know what's holding you back. It's not time. It's not money. It's not that you don't have a story. It's people. What will they think? What will they say? What if they don't get it? And I get it. We're wired for belonging. It's literally in our DNA. Back in the day, if your tribe rejected you, you didn't just get your feelings hurt. You died. That instinct still lives in us. But here's what nobody tells you. You're not being chased by a saber-toothed tiger. You're not going to die if someone thinks your story is too much. You're not going to be exiled if someone rolls their eyes at your Instagram post. You're not in mortal danger if your old high school friends gossip about you in their group chat. Your fear is lying to you. And even worse, it's keeping you stuck. Because here's the thing. Like I said a few minutes ago, the people who will judge you were never going to support you anyways. The people who talk shit were never going to invest in you. But the people who truly matter, they will respect the hell out of you for owning your story. And if they don't, they were never your people to begin with. And this is absolutely true. I see people starting from the beginning all the time. And even when it's incredibly bad, all I think of is, hell yes, Amber from 7th grade. Look at you go. Good job putting yourself out there before you've perfected it. That is so beautiful. You want to know why? Because I've been there and I know what it takes. And I know that this beginning part, the embarrassment, is initiation for what's to come. We've all been through it. So the only people judging like you should stop are the ones who aren't going to do anything anyways. And those aren't your inspiration. Those aren't the people that you want to surround yourself with. I remember when I first started talking about my story publicly, like really talking about it, and not just the surface level version. Part of me thought, what if everyone I know sees this? And then I realized, oh no, not the people who never check on me, not the people who don't pay my bills, not the people who haven't been part of my life for years. And suddenly I felt free as hell because I was giving all this power to people who literally didn't matter. And if someone did have a problem with it, if someone was whispering about me behind my back, good, let them whisper. Because while they were sitting around talking about me, I was out here building a brand and growing an audience and creating real impact. Do you know who gets criticized the most? The people who actually do something. Dr. Joe Dispenza has an entire army of skeptics who dismiss his work as pseudoscience. But that didn't stop him from changing millions of lives. Mel Robbins gets criticized for being too basic, yet millions of people have transformed their lives from her basic guidance. Elon Musk, love him or hate him, has built multiple billion-dollar companies, and half the internet still thinks he's a joke. Criticism is part of the deal. It's proof that you're playing big. So the question isn't, what if people judge me? The question is, what if I let that stop me? Because you want to know what's actually scary? Waking up 5 years from now in the exact same place because you were too afraid to take up space. So if you're worried about what people will think, let me make this real simple for you. They're already thinking something. You might as well make it something worth talking about. So by now, you get it, hopefully. Confidence isn't something you wait for. It's something you build. Your fear of what people think, it's not a reason to stay quiet. It's the reason you need to speak up. But this is where most people stop. They nod along, they feel inspired for a moment, and then they go right back to playing small. They tell themselves they'll share their story someday, when they have more time, when they feel more ready, when they have proof that it's worth sharing. But that's not how this works. Because guess what? You don't wake up one day magically ready. Readiness comes from doing. And that means your next step is simple. Step 1, write out your story. Even if it's messy, even if it's not perfect, even if it feels like a tangled web of chaos right now, just get it out of your head and onto paper. Step 2, say it out loud. Maybe just to yourself in the mirror, maybe to a friend, maybe on a voice memo. Just practice owning it. And step 3, share it somewhere. Post it, speak it, put it out there in a way that stretches you even just a little, even if it's on an anonymous Reddit account. You don't have to start with your deepest, rawest truth. Just start where you can. But start. Because confidence doesn't come from waiting. It comes from showing up before you feel ready. Let me tell you something that changed everything for me. When I started my podcast, I had no idea if people would listen. I didn't have a huge audience. I didn't have an audience at all. I didn't have a perfectly polished brand. I had a microphone and a story. That's it. But I showed up. I spoke my truth. I didn't wait until I felt 100% ready. I just started talking. And within months, sponsors started reaching out. Doors started opening. My voice started reaching people who needed to hear it. And not because I was fearless, not because I had it all figured out, but because I decided to show up anyways. So this is your moment. I need you to hear me when I say this. You don't need permission to take up space. You don't need someone to tell you that your story is worthy of being shared. You don't need to wait for the perfect moment. The moment is now, because 5 years from now, you will have either 1, finally owned your story and created something powerful from it, or 2, still be sitting on the sidelines wondering if it's too late. So which version of you are you choosing? You've waited long enough. It's time. So right now, you might be feeling that pull. You know that you need to do this. You feel it. But you also might be thinking, where do I even start? I've got you. I created something to help you take the first step, and it's completely free. It's called Unlock Your Story Magic, a step-by-step guide to finding the story you were meant to share and learning how to tell it in a way that actually moves people. So inside, I break it all down for you. You'll learn the biggest storytelling myths that are keeping you stuck, how to find the moments in your life that actually matter, and the simple framework for crafting your story so it connects instantly. So if this episode hit home for you, this is your next step. Go grab your free copy of Unlock Your Story Magic right now at mindlove.com/magic. That's mindlove.com/magic, because your story is already inside you. You just need to unlock it.
Thanks for tuning into Your Higher Frequency with Mind Love. Head to mindlove.com for a free gift to keep your vibes up until next week.